This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to be, nah, dude. Come over here, this where it's at.
Yo. Place to be is on my side, dude. Cause you don't wanna be the target when I fly the coop.
Nah, place to be is on my side, dude. Cause you don't wanna be the target when I fly the coop.
Buenos dias.
We call it the place to be. Yes, the place to be. Then I shall be.
It is contagious. It is the place to be, and we are live each and every Monday.
To do worse than Josh Richard.
Place to Be Nation proudly presents a powerful pair of pro wrestling pundits. It's JT Rosero and Scott Criscolo, and this is the Place to Be Podcast.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to the great episode of the one and only Place to Be Podcast, coming to you here on this Monday evening. JT, joining me as always, my partner, Scott Criscolo. Scott, how are you?
I'm well, JR. How are you? Hello, everyone on the PTB Wrestling Network. Welcome to episode 615 of the longest-running episodic motherfucking gold standard, which is fitting because we have a gold standard in 2008 WWE. The United States champion, but we are the true gold standard. JR, how are you? Everything good?
I'm good. I'm excited. It's, of course, Thanksgiving week, which is always a fun one for us. I'm looking forward to seeing you this weekend, as usual.
Yes, very excited. Different kind of weekend. Looking forward to it.
Yes, got some fun stuff planned. So we'll kick that week off right here with this podcast episode. So it should be a lot of fun as we continue to move through 2008. And joining us is a returning guest, last with us in the DeLorean of our old timeline, back in Madison Square Garden times. But we are bringing him back here as we have fast-forwarded back to our original timeline. And that is the roast master himself, Mr. Mike Lawrence. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, and I am thankful I'm not watching an IRS British Bulldog 20-minute draw.
It's a win.
Yes.
It's a win. Wins all over the place. But no, thank you for joining us as always. Of course, we know you've been around for a while with us here as a listener, as a friend, and now, of course, also as a occasional guest. So it's good to have you back.
I turned down the Ric Flair roast, but I agreed to come back to you guys. I was supposed to do that, and my spider sense tingled, and I didn't.
Well, I think you probably made the right call, and we know you definitely made the right call.
I can't say anything meaner to him than what time has done.
That's correct.
That is true. Yes, sadly.
But you did make an amazing call to join us back here tonight, so we're excited to have you. But what we're going to do first is head back in time yet again to our vintage wrestling tidbit. We're going to go back to October 1994, Scott Criscolo. What's going on in the world of wrestling on this time period, at this date?
Well, on this date, October 5th, 1994, guess what? Nothing's going on. Both there you go. Both the WWF and WCW both are off on this evening. No house shows, of course. WWF is continuing their build towards Survivor Series in San Antonio. WCW, let's see. Well, they finished up Fall Brawl and they are going towards Halloween Havoc in a few weeks, and so they're in between as well. On the Brian Lee update, no, we're not doing that. No.
We ended up Brian Lee last episode. Yes, we're
doing. One episode.
Although I will say, I've low key become a Brian Lee fan. Like on Extreme Three-Way Dance, I liked him quite a bit in ECW, and on TNA Never Dies, like he's actually pretty good. I think at 03 TNA as part of the church. So, anyway.
Yes, I agree. But so nothing on the house show look for this month. So JR, why don't we fire up the Herb?
Let's do it. We have 4 batches, Mike. You excited? 4 herbs for
Oh
you.
yeah.
All right. Let's dive in. September 15th, 1994. This Sunday is Fall Brawl. Lineup is Terry Funk, Bunkhouse Buck, Arn Anderson, and Colonel Parker versus Dusty Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys in War Games. Sting, Guardian Angel, and Vader in a triangular match. Rick Steamboat versus Steve Austin for the U.S. title. Orndorff and Roma versus Bagwell and Patriot for the tag titles. Cactus Jack versus Kevin Sullivan in a loser leaves WCW match. And Steven Regal versus Johnny B. Bad for the TV title. They ran an interview segment this past weekend where Colonel Parker was announced as a replacement for Ming in War Games, pretty much exposing the finish of the match, I would think. Lots of talk that King Kong Bundy will be quickly pushed to the upper mix of the WWF. He already debuted at a TV taping, managed by Ted DiBiase, of course, doing his 5-count gimmick from years back when the new generation wasn't so new. He's supposed to be pushed straight into a feud with Bret Hart. Local papers report that WCW has finally squared a deal with Curt Hennig this past week, although he probably won't make a debut until November. Hennig will turn out to be the masked guy that clubbed Hogan's knee at the Clash. More on ECW. To summarize, the 827 ECW had the sanction of the NWA Board of Directors to create a new NWA World Champion. The winner of the tourney was to drop the title to whomever the board selected when Jim Crockett got his promotion off the ground. Instead, the tourney winner, Shane Douglas, discarded the NWA title, saying the ECW title was far more important. Much discussion resulted. Was this a planned backstab? Did Gordon feel he was getting screwed and come up with a backstab and retaliation? The whole affair has led to ECW changing the E in its name from Eastern to Extreme, tossing aside the regional implications of Eastern at an early stage of rumored national expansion. Of course, the NWA board declared the tournament void, stripped Douglas of both the NWA title and recognition as ever having held the title. ECW now calls this title holder the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. Meltzer reports that Paul Heyman and Shane Douglas appeared on wrestling radio call-in shows after this, and this is funny. Douglas claimed that the idea to throw the NWA belt away and proclaim himself the ECW belt champion as a meaningful one came to him in the ring spontaneously, and it was his idea alone. He categorically denied any premeditation on his part or the promotion's part. Heyman said he had no knowledge of what Douglas had either already said or was going to say. He came on John Arezzi's show and said the idea was playing well in advance and said it was a double cross, but they had their reasons for doing it. He said he would accept whatever heat has come down from the decision. Arezzi also has booked NWA board member Dennis Coralluzzo, who was at that show and was the victim of the double cross as a guest. He said both Douglas and Heyman are liars, by which their own contradictions of the same story came off. At least one of them was lying. Gordon's explanation of what happened was that he called Jim Crockett and was asked to do the tournament. He said he understood the idea was to have Douglas win and drop the title to one of Crockett's guys, and the WA champion would be Crockett's company champion, as was the case in the 80s. Gordon said he understood the situation, not that he liked it. He was irked when Crockett said the ECW champion could be the old Mid-Atlantic champion, a stepping stone title for the big belt. He didn't want his champion being regarded as simply a stepping stone. He said they had Coralluzzo do the interview after Douglas threw down the belt so he could escape with some dignity. But despite what was said by others who possibly didn't know themselves, dangerously planned the scenario before any of the controversy about the tournament had ever gone public. In a practical sense of the word, it was a double cross. It was premeditated, planned in advance, and I can give you a million reasons why Coralluzzo had it coming. We wanted to put the credibility of the history of the NWA title into ours. I'm not Bill Watts, so I'm not going to say what justifies the tactics. I can tell you Coralluzzo brought it on himself. After a year, he kept fucking with our business. We did what was questionable, but I think it was justified. It was a classic wrestling promoter double cross move. I taught Coralluzzo a lesson. Crockett's done nothing to help the organization. When you do things like that, you have to take the criticism because it's an unethical move. So a lot on ECW. We'll get to it in a second. Halloween Havoc, October 23rd. Hogan versus Flair for the world title. Mr. T is referee. Hogan will retire if he loses. AAA is broadcasting a show live on pay-per-view on November 6th. Clash of the Champions on November 16th. Survivor Series November 23rd, with the Hart family feud expected to generate the main event, and Diesel turning babyface to split up with Shawn Michaels, and Starrcade on December 27th. Mike, any thoughts on this batch of notes here?
Well, no, this is a big historical thing, and I mean, perfect that we're talking about this on a 2008 WWE pay-per-view when they put ECW in a trash can. This was, I mean, massive. I didn't know this happened so early. I thought this was more like a 96, 97 thing because of the pay-per-view and everything. But nah, I mean, you know, we all knew that Paul was lying. that did not seem like a double cross or a single cross or anything. But no, I mean, this led to a really huge moment, and I think ECW is still, you know, obviously beloved today, and I don't know if it gets as remembered without this big of a start. I mean, is there a better rebranding of a company than this? Probably not.
I don't think so. Not as dramatic, anyway.
No.
It's a shame too, because in some cases, because obviously the NWA title was so prestigious, and now it's the way that it's funny, because as we talked about a couple weeks ago, JR, on the last show, that national wrestling as a national entity was struggling badly. So it felt like we were going to get a flux of promotions again. We thought maybe the NWA would kind of come back to prominence, but they fell behind badly. And this was just an utter embarrassment for them. And ECW suddenly kind of jumped to the forefront. The question was going to be to what capacity, and would they be a promotion that people would jump on in the mid 90s to counter struggling WWF, and at this moment struggling WCW. Time would tell, but it was huge. It was absolutely huge. I was stunned, and I'm a big Shane Douglas guy. And I was stunned when that happened. It's, and as we get into 1995, and we'll talk a little more ECW here and there, I became a huge fan of it because it came on late around here in 95. But it's a crazy moment. It's a crazy moment in the history of the business that I think sometimes gets forgotten. It's just another moment, but it really is huge for the future of the business. So.
Well, I think at the time it was like a big story and kind of crazy, but you didn't really know the implications. Like, you didn't think ECW was going to blow up like it did, right? So, like, at the time it was like, okay, the NWA's been a freaking corpse anyway, so here's more madness going on with it, whatever. I remember reading about it like in PWI and stuff. So it was newsworthy, but you didn't think it was going to lead to anything, really. It just seemed like more shenanigans on the indie scene. It wasn't really until years later, when you look back in hindsight, in retrospect, that you see,
right?
Oh wow, like this was a massive event.
And I think it gets shadowed by the Monday Night Wars and Medusa and all of that. Having someone do that on television when both companies are airing a program at the same time is such like a bigger, moment in terms of eyeballs. But I think that this is definitely, any wrestling historian finds this extremely fascinating. And I didn't realize that was a pun, but it is.
All right, let's head a week to September 23rd. Fall Brawl took place this past Sunday. Johnny B. Bad won the TV title. Jim Duggan won the U.S. title. Vader earned the number one contender slot, and Cactus Jack worked his final match with WCW. Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan announced their cage match on October 23rd. Giving Duggan the second most important singles title caused me to give the show a slight thumbs down. Duggan did get a lot of cheers when he walked to the ring, and there was a good USA chant during his few seconds in the ring. Duggan entered the picture when Ricky Steamboat announced that he had a back injury and could not wrestle on the show. In a good sign of consistent booking, Nick Bockwinkel announced he had no other choice but to give the title to Steve Austin. This jives with the angle at the 824 Clash, where they said that Hogan would forfeit to Flair if he couldn't wrestle. So for at least 1 month, we have consistency. The booking of this little storyline wasn't too bad, as Austin was great. The final outcome is not a good sign for enthusiasts of ability. Austin comes out of this looking without losing credibility. He was bowled over at the last second. He was unprepared, suffered a quick count, wriggling the whole time, and before anyone knew what was happening. There's already talk that Austin would get a world title push as soon as Hogan versus Flair is played out. The booking of the triangular match between Sting and Guardian Angel and Vader was also good, in my opinion. Sting and Vader are certainly the highlight of the show. It's saving grace as far as match ratings go. The final sudden death minutes were played up well by both men. It was nice and a bit of a surprise to see Vader go over. Ron Simmons, Tex Ossinger, and Shanghai Pierce were all given notice by WCW that acts as talk of Simmons being used as Harlem Heat's manager. Talk persists about Hulk Hogan signing a several-year-long deal with some sort with WCW. Current rumors have the deal being for sporadic appearances over that time, with Hogan being phased out as a key performer. That every announcer has to mention 4 times per minute, I'm sure. Hogan's series Thunder in Paradise was renewed for 22 new episodes next season, so the company does have to figure out direction based on those severe schedule restrictions for Hogan in a sizable chunk of the year. There's talk, too, that Hogan will see limited pro wrestling exposure as a valuable tool to keep a celebrity status and use that to launch himself to other ventures. Besides Kurt Hennig, Brutus Beefcake and the Road Warriors will be coming in by the end of the year. Halloween Havoc on October 23rd, Hogan versus Flair, Orndorff and Roma versus Bagwell and Patriot, Duggan versus Regal for the U.S. title, Johnny B. Bad versus the Honky Tonk Man for the TV title, Vader versus Guardian Angel in a strap match. Dustin Rhodes versus Arn Anderson. Nasty Boys versus Terry Funk and Bunkhouse Buck. AAA on November 6th. Clash of Champions on November 16th. Survivor Series 11/23. Starrcade 12/27. You guys have any thoughts on the nuggets there from Herb?
I mean,
Why is
when
he
you
on
read
this,
that,
go ahead,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
When you like just in all of it, and Beefcake will be there by the end of the year. You don't think it'll be in the main event of Starrcade?
Right? I know, it's crazy. And the headache stuff seems to be a persistent talking point. Like, he's mentioned headache every notes now that he's coming in. So I don't know when that falls apart that he doesn't come in. But it seems like a no-brainer. Like, it's like, oh, it's definitely headache. And even at the time, I remember thinking it was going to be him because they were definitely hinting on it on TV. So that had to be the original plan, I would think, was headache coming in as the mystery man. And then they swerve it to Beefcake when that falls apart.
I got a good replacement, brother.
Right?
When did I'm trying? I mean, I know he mentioned it a lot on our last episode, but why is he on this AAA kick? Like, he never talked about it, and all of a sudden, literally every.
I think it's because maybe WCW's promoting it, and it's like it's a local, like they never air pay-per-view in the US, so I think it was a pretty big deal at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. It's hitting me weird. I don't know why, but okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, let's go forward to September 29th. September 24th, 1994 will be remembered as a very good day and a terrible day. Well, it's my birthday. It's also the day Jushin Liger badly broke his leg. So it talks about that for a minute. There are reports that WWF will release a book written by The Undertaker called Tombstoned. There's a lot of talk that The Undertaker will be given the world title, with the primary guest being that it'll take place on Monday Night Raw's Halloween edition. There's little doubt that current champion Bret Hart will be moved into a feud with King Kong Bundy by November, since they're lined up in the Europe tour. So perhaps Bundy will be put over the big with a brief world title reign before dropping it to Undertaker on Halloween. Popular prediction has Yokozuna being the interim champion and losing it to Taker to balance the scales of their old feud. Just prior to Halloween, the house shows are still headlined by Hart versus Neidhart and Taker versus Yokozuna in casket matches. Thank God none of this came to fruition.
I know.
Would have been a mess. But it shows you, again, just how unlikely the Backlund stuff was. Like, we're almost into October, and there's not even a mention that Backlund is going to be, like, in the world title mix at Survivor Series or any of that. Like, it's Bret Neidhart, Taker in the mix, Bundy in the mix. Like, there's no mention at all of Backlund in any of this.
No. I think it was probably meant to be pretty much mid-card, and that's about it. Seems like.
Did the Taker book ever come out?
I don't think so. I think they did something years later about like Taker and Kane or whatever, right? In their history.
Like a kayfabe thing, right?
Yeah. I don't think he ever did a book otherwise.
Yeah. Can you imagine how long that audiobook would be?
Oh God.
Chapter 2. I rise.
At a house show in Saskatoon.
Me and the Bone Street crew were hanging out. I said, Midian, you should be naked, Midian.
All right. Marcus Bagwell, the Patriot, won the tag team titles on the live main event broadcast on Sunday. This was foreshadowed when Saturday Night Show referred to the duo as tag champions, and I hate those kind of careless mistakes. The live show also saw the breakup of Dave and Kevin Sullivan. Can't wait for their matches. There's increased talk that Cactus Jack will be in as a regular at Smoky Mountain Wrestling. The Observer reports that Thurman Sparky Plug has changed names to Bob Sparkplug Holly, probably for legal reasons, but I can't imagine what those would be. And pretty obvious, right? STP, I think, was the potential legal reason, Sparky Thurman Plug. Either way, may this realize it's a dumb name. WCW scored a plum in the new television season. Toronto station CFTO and Ottawa station CJOH both picked up worldwide Cindy. The WWF is still aired in force in those markets, but WCW had only been available to Canadian cable subscribers who paid extra to get TBS or WSBK. The WWE Cindy has a special Canadian control center, and the show runs several plugs for the all-new WCW Canadian hotline. Well, on this topic, the Cindy's, WWF Cindy's, since they were running in far more markets to begin with, took a big hit this new TV season. There's much talk that WCW will begin a light heavyweight tournament in the near future, begin promoting two weight divisions again. In 1992 under Bill Watts, this idea led to one of the best matches ever in North America with Brian Pillman versus Jushin Liger. Now under Eric Bischoff, they develop a relationship of sorts with AAA. They've renegotiated a talent trade deal with New Japan and smaller North American guys. The possibilities of this tournament could be fantastic. Names Pillman, Alex Wright, Brady Boone, among others. Of course, in the end, it could be something less fantastic, will be arranged, but it could still be the highlight of the year. After working a couple of tours to New Japan, Steven Regal has decided he'd rather apply his skills there for a bit and will be leaving WCW pretty much immediately. It's unclear how long he'll be a regular foreigner with the group. Halloween Havoc, pretty much the same card we talked about last week. Muhammad Ali will present the WCW title belt to the winner. In exchange, WCW will be donating proceeds to the Muhammad Ali Foundation. At this point, too, he's only saying Hogan would retire if losing. He does no mention of Flair at this point. AAA on 11-6. Here's the card he runs down. Conan versus Perro Aguayo, 2 out of 3 falls. Elio De Santo and Octagon versus Eddie Guerrero with Love Machine. Mask versus Hair. That's a pretty famous match. 2 out of 3 falls. Chris Benoit, Tugo Scorpio, and Tito Santana versus La Parca, Blue Panther, and Jerry Estrada. 2 out of 3. Heavy Metal, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Latin Lover versus Psychosis, Fuerza Guerrera, and Madonna's Boyfriend. 2 out of 3. Masquerita Sagrada and Octagoncito versus Espectrito and Jarrito Estrada, 2 out of 3 as well. Of course, I think this was Mysterio's big coming out party as well. That's why it's a big deal. It's after this that he ends up signing with ECW shortly after. So, yeah, pretty much puts him on the radar in this show. So I know you mentioned Scott before, like why it's a big deal. I think that's a big part of why it ended up being a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Yeah.
Clash of Champions 11-16, Survivors 11-23. Starrcade 12-27. Tentative has Hulk Hogan versus Vader for the WCW title. Vader has apparently agreed to put Hogan over and work lighter than usual. Of course, they'd eventually get there, but not at Starrcade. Any thoughts on that batch, Mike?
No, it's interesting I've seen that AAA match, so I could see why they were covering it a little bit and just. This is a really fascinating time in wrestling and a snapshot of like what was going on and being phased out and what was to be, like all these big stars, having some of their first matches. Pretty amazing. And I think Latin Lover is in that movie Roma, like the Oscar nominated film. He plays like a drill instructor.
They meant Paul Roma. The biography of a horseman.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
October 6th, our final batch here tonight. This past Saturday, WCW ran the Ric Flair interview where Flair did announce he'd put his career on the line at Halloween Havoc in his match against Hogan. The loser of the match will retire from wrestling in any promotion. There's lots of confusion about the whole thing, right from columnists, local columnists, and people I've talked about on the phone to Observer editor Dave Meltzer. Meltzer reports that Flair wasn't told of these plans to add the stipulation until the day after the scenario began on the live 9:25 main event broadcast. He painted a picture of Flair, who, if all this surmising is true, is the booker of the company in title only, being forced into a situation and going along with it to keep his reputation as a company man. Career versus career stipulation certainly won't hurt buys, whether you like it or not. From a rating standpoint, this is the best thing going today. Nobody in his right mind expects Hogan to give up a pinfall to Flair in a cage. With a very rare exception, there's always a winner. By special referee, it could be a wild card with Mr. T. To confuse fans who obviously think T would favor Hogan, this past week's main event aired camcorder footage of T and Flair walking together outside of a club. The report from Meltzer then added a stipulation for Flair was the last-second idea to generate hope to be the highest buy rate in company history, makes looking at known future plans or past plans a dubious exercise. Here's a summary of things that comes to mind. When the lineups for WCW pay-per-views through Halloween Havoc were first known, there's talk of a retirement stipulation on Flair if he lost the match. Print ads were supposedly released with this stipulation. Talk had those original plans scrapped because Hogan refused to job to Flair. When the original plan of having a retirement stipulation on Flair were dropped in place of one on Hogan, Talk had Hogan dropping the belt at the Clash to set up an all-or-nothing rematch. That didn't happen. It was reported that Hogan again refused the job. Meltzer now reports that adding the Flair stipulation was a last-minute thing thrown at Flair, who just went along with it. The footage of T and Flair was shown on TV to cast doubt, and the print ads for Starrcade just came out with a double main event of Hogan, Vader, and Flair Sting. There are 3 ways this cage match would end. Hogan loses, obviously with a screw job by T, a masked man, or Vader. Flair loses, which most likely would be clean, or nobody loses. Obviously, there'd be some sort of screwy ending. If Hogan loses, they can find a way to work around the stipulation, either masking him or having a petition of some sort. If Flair loses, I can't see the company having him return to the ring by Starrcade, so we'd have to accept the future plans for throwing out an Impulse. He could still manage and do great interviews. He has said that when he retires, it would be a real retirement. If nobody loses, the company is taking a chance that they won't have alienated people by ripping them off. In this case, they'll have to do something pretty creative so it comes off well. WCW has several major Hogan versus Flair shows slated as house shows after the pay-per-view. Talk has that Vader would take Flair's spot. To add to the confusion, it's reported that Hogan signed some sort of additional deal to extend their alliance, but that deal may not have a wrestling component. Local Communist reports that WCW and Hogan are having trouble reaching that agreement. Jesse Ventura is officially history with WCW. Timothy Well and Samu are gone from the WWF. The Head Shrinkers tag team will now be Fatu and the Barbarian, killing what was once the best team in the promotion. How dare you? No word on what's in store for Stephen Dunn, the other half of what once been well done. Maybe they'll create a pro golfer character to go along with their baseball and race car driver, and team with Stephen as the Dunn 4. King Kong Bundy returns on this weekend's Indies. Terry Funk, his history of WCW, is going back to Japan. There's talk that WCW is considering bringing in the Warlord, who's the biggest stiff since John Studd, per Meltzer. No word on if he'd bring his magic wand or not. I received some emails telling me that WWF Indies have disappeared from different readers' markets. In this case, WCW Worldwide has replaced Superstars. Big storyline built into Superstar Cindy has Jerry Lawler doing mean things to Dink. First he popped Dink's balloons, then he destroyed his tricycle, smashing into a ring post. Real funny. Now to balance the scales, he's brought in Little Louie as a midget sidekick and called him Queasy. Perhaps that's how viewers are supposed to feel. Halloween Havoc, he runs down the card. It's the same. AAA, same card. UWFI pay-per-view on 11/11. Clash on 11/16. So obviously here's 11/23 with a tentative lineup of Bret Hart versus Bob Backlund for the WWF title. Undertaker versus Yokozuna in a casket match. Shawn Michaels and Diesel versus Fatu and Barbarian for the tag team titles. Doink, Dink, Wink, and Pink versus Lawler, Queasy, Wheezy, and the Little Prince. Like how they went off brand for the Little Prince. Starrcade 94, Flair, Sting, Hogan, Vader. Of course, this could change. So that's it for our notes for tonight. Any final thoughts before we move along?
I didn't realize there was a ton of contract shit still with Hogan, even in end of 94. I don't really remember that. I figured everything was locked in. I don't know what the deal with that is about. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know what the original contract was for, what he signed in June. If it was just like a short term, if it was for a year, I don't recall, but
it's so crazy that like Bundy was gone for what, like 9-10 years, and then he came back and it was the exact same gimmick and everything. He looked the same, he wrestled the same. It was, and then Backlund. It's like such a bizarre time when, you know, everyone talks about the new generation, and then these just old guys that were also there, that like Nikolai Volkov was there and all this stuff.
It is such a weird time period. I mean, I guess the only thing you could say is at least the old guys were kind of being used to put over new guys. I mean, this makes it like Bundy's getting a big push, but I'm thinking within like a month or so of seeing him, they realized that it wasn't going to happen because through Survivor Series, he's still getting pushed pretty good. Like he's survives that match. And it seems like they're prepping him, and obviously they give him the Mania slot. So I guess they did have pretty good plans with him, but he never really gets to that world title picture that they've been talking about. So again, just like the Shango thing, Scott, we talked about last episode, like I don't know if Backlund catching fire just completely changed all of their plans for the fall. And maybe this didn't really expect that to happen, you know?
It's got to be. Like, I don't think they ever thought that like their long-term plan for the back end of 94 into 95 was Bob Backlund.
Right.
Sitting here worried about, you know, the issues in the company and the struggles of the national product on both sides. Mm-hmm. And you're like, Bob Backlund's the answer. But you're like,
right.
The guy's fucking ridiculous. And in a great way. Like, he's totally flipped the script. And people are digging it. So fuck it. Roll with it. Why not? It's got nothing to lose at this point, you know? I had no problem with it. Better than the whole Taker thing. I feel like Taker being champion at this point would have been difficult because I feel like there weren't enough worthy challengers, particularly when we were still leaning towards Diesel turning face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Taker being champion at that moment would have been good for him because creatively, I think they were kind of in a quandary with him, as we would see in 95. So
it doesn't feel like until like, you know, like Mankind and then HBK, and I guess there's the one Brett match where he feels like he's actually a part of the main roster proper. Like
Right.
he always feels like his own side quest to the rest of the company.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. That's true.
Yeah, and I think like being tied to DiBiase doesn't help as well because they're just giving DiBiase all these go nothings, do nothings. I think Bigelow could have been a choice, right? But they have him obviously end up earmarking him for LT. So I guess Bundy was kind of the next biggest guy if you're running with the DiBiase angle. I mean, Taker versus DiBiase lasts what from SummerSlam '94 ostensibly through SummerSlam '95. Like a comma's it, right? Is that then he moves on pretty much? So it's a full year of that feud. So there's a lot there. But,
And I feel bad for anyone doing a podcast that has to continue covering that.
Interesting.
Some guys on a mission. All right, all right, so that'll do it for our vintage wrestling notes. I will say maybe when Hogan signed that deal, he was like, yeah, I'll job to your brother, to Flair, thinking like, oh yeah, I'll put you over. And of course, then when the time comes, he's like, no, I'm not going to lay down. Let's just have some fun. That's all I want to do is have some fun. Let's go out there, beat you again. That said, at that same time, there's someone else saying that all she wants to do is have some fun. That was Sheryl Crow. Number 2 song in the nation this week in 1994, Scott Crisco brings us into your vintage pop culture corner.
This is LA. All I want to do is have a little fun before I die. Sits a man next to me out of nowhere. It's apropos of nothing. He says his name is William. I'm sure he's Bill, Billy, or Mac, or Buddy. And he's playing ugly to me.
Indeed, all we want to do is have some fun, which is number 2 on this week, October 8th, 1994. Still number 1 is I'll Make Love to You by Boyz II Men. Hulk Hogan would make love to himself because there's no one better. So he's number 1. All I Want to Do, Sheryl Crow, number 2. Endless Love by Luther Vandross and Mariah Carey, the remake of the Lionel Richie, Diana Ross version at number 3. When Can I See You by Babyface at 4. Wild Night, song we talked about 2 weeks ago. At number 5, John Mellencamp. Stroke You Up by Changing Faces at 6. Lisa Loeb, Stay at number 7. At Your Best by Aaliyah at 8. Never Lie by Immature at 9. And Another Night by The Real McCoy. Another night. Is that it? Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
At number 10. Yeah, that's
it.
the one. So there you go. That's at number 10. So there's your top 10 this week.
Still a pretty fun list there. I think a lot of good songs. 94 is a really iconic year for music. It's
there's no doubt.
It's pretty loaded. Yeah.
You definitely saw a shift the back end of 94 after Kurt died. I feel like the Seattle thing kind of got a little wobbly for the rest of the year and then kind of regained its footing in 95, I think. I feel like so. So there you go. There's your Billboard top 10 for this week. So let's go from the radio to the theater and what was going on in theaters. You want to talk about heavyweights? Holy shit! Here we go. Here, this is the weekend chart for movies. The week ending October 7th, 1994. At number 10, it kind of spiked up a bit. It's up to $356 million for Jurassic Park, the first one. Crazy.
Yeah.
At number 9.
In 94?
Yeah, it was still.
Did they
re-release
it? Because that was 93, right?
Yeah, but it.
I think it's still out, or yeah.
No, 70 weeks in release at this point. Still making money, and that's batshit. Well, if you ask JR, when we were on our original, on our last timeline, how long was Home Alone in theaters? Felt like
that was out forever, yeah.
For like 2 years. So, at number 9, 9 weeks for kind of an unheralded movie, in my opinion. Speed. Of course, Keanu Reeves and what's her name? Sandra Bullock and awesome heel Dennis Hopper. Pretty great. Great movie.
2 for 2 on movies I actually saw in the theater. Let's see if we can keep it up.
There we go. All right. This one you might have. Number 8, The Client.
No.
John Grisham.
Ends there.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Number 7, in my opinion, probably one of the 10 best movies of all time and probably top 5 for the decade of the 90s, The Shawshank Redemption. Tremendous movie, of course. Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. Fantastic movie. Number 6, Quiz Show. Another good movie. Number 5, Jason's Lyric. Number 4, still in theaters, 15 weeks for Forrest Gump, up to $276 million. Only You, making its debut at number 3. The River Wild at number 2. And the number 1 movie of the weekend, The Specialist, which I think that was Sly and... Is that Sly and what's his name? Antonio Banderas, or is that Assassins? I think that was Assassins.
That's Assassins. The Specialist is Sharon Stone, I think.
Sharon Stone and Sly. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sly was making some pretty good movies in the 90s. Too bad. Not too bad. So there's your movie list for the top 10 movies for this week, October 7th, 1994. So we now go from leaving the theater and taking the field.
All right. Last episode, I eked by Grooney 8-7. I'm going to continue to hopefully build on my lead here against you, Mr. Lawrence, in our NFL pick'em from 1994.
All right, so that was week 1. This is week 5. So these games were played on October 2nd and 3rd of 1994, week 5 of the NFL season. So we'll begin at Old Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, where the Browns host the Jets, JR.
All right, I don't think the Jets' collapse had begun yet, so I'm going to take them in this game.
Mike?
I'm going to go Jets.
The Jets' collapse did begin on this week.
Oh.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if it did, but they didn't win. And I forgot you had Jack Trudeau as your quarterback. That probably
fucking Belichick, even then, huh?
Yeah, it didn't help matters. Browns win 27-7 in Cleveland. Let's go to the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, where the Colts host the Seattle Seahawks, Mike.
I will go Seahawks.
Okay.
I'll take Indy.
Marshall Faulk rushes for 90 yards. Colts win by 2, 17-15. Let's go to Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough, that old dump, as the Patriots take on the Green Bay Packers. JR.
I'll take the Pats at home under Mr. Bill Parcells.
Okay, JR. Mike.
I'll go Packers.
Drew Bledsoe threw for 334. Pats win by a point, 17-16. Let's go to the old Big Sombrero in Tampa. The Bucks hosting Detroit, Mike.
Detroit.
Yeah, I'll take the Lions.
Barry rushed for 166, but the Bucks win at home, 24-14. Let's go to RFK, one of the best rivalries in football, the Cowboys and Washington redacted. JR.
I'll take Dallas.
I will take the Washington.
Nickname or no nickname, they lost. Troy rushed for $181, or threw for $181. Cowboys win 34-7. Let's go to Soldier Field in Chicago, where the Bears host Buffalo. Mike.
I'll say Buffalo.
Yeah, me too.
No. Bears win at home, 20-13. Wow, the Bills struggled.
I was gonna say, I gotta stop picking them. I guess it's too.
Yeah. Well, the run was starting to finish at this point. Let's go out to Phoenix, to old Tempe Stadium, Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe. The Cardinals host the Minnesota Vikings. JR.
I'll take Arizona.
Okay, Mike.
I'll go Vikings.
Warren Moon. He was in Minnesota, and he threw for 355.
Jeez.
But the Cardinals win 17-7. How do you throw for 355 yards and only score 7 points?
Jesus.
It's weird.
NFL was weird in the 90s.
It really was weird. Let's go to the Superdome in New Orleans, where the Saints host the New York Giants. Let's see, where are we? 5, 6, 7. Mike.
I'm going to go Giants.
JR?
Yeah. All right.
Jim Everett throws for 249. Saints win at home, 27-22.
I don't think I've gotten one right yet. I'm very
That's
proud
correct.
of-
You have not. You have not got one right.
I'm worse at picking football than I am at playing it. So
Let's go to Anaheim Stadium, where the Rams host the Atlanta Falcons. JR.
God, all these shitty teams. All right, I'll take the Falcons.
Mike?
I'll take the Falcons.
Talking about shitty of the 90s. Falcons 8. Rams 5.
Yeah.
How the
Awful.
fuck? When was the last time in NFL history 2 teams had safeties? Because I don't think
8
the
to
2-point
5.
conversion. I don't think the 2-point conversion was there yet.
No,
right?
no, it wasn't there yet. Yeah.
So each team had a safety in this game. Oof.
8
Talk
to
about-
5, like that would be a really fun soccer match, though.
Yes, it would.
Or hockey.
Or hockey.
So that's 3 field goals and 2 safeties in that game, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
That's absolutely. I got to click on the box score because I got to look at that for a minute because I got to see how that happens. So, all right. So scoring. Yep. Safety. Oh, wait a minute. No, the 2-point conversion was in existence.
Oh, that must have been the first year then, maybe.
Because Sean Gilbert tackled Jeff George in the end zone. That made it 2-0 Rams. Then Tony Zendejas kicked a 28-yard field goal to make it 5-0. And then in the fourth quarter, Ricky Sanders catches a 13-yard touchdown pass from Bobby Hebert, and Terrence Mathis caught the 2-point conversion, and the Falcons won 8-5. So
Yeah, 1994. Browns punter Tom Tupa scored the first 2-point conversion in NFL history.
Oh, there you go. So, yeah, so this was the 2-point conversion. So Falcons win 8-5. All right, let's go out to Candlestick in San Francisco. The 49ers hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. JR. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry, Mike.
I'll go 49ers.
Okay. I remember this game very well. Steve Young got benched and started screaming in George Seifert's face. I very much remember this game. Eagles win 40-8.
Oof.
I remember watching that game, and I remember Steve Young like threw his helmet and screamed at George Seifert. I wonder how their season would go after that. Let's go out to Riverfront in Cincinnati. The Bengals host the Miami Dolphins. JR.
I will take Miami.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, Dolphins.
Dan Marino did not throw for 473 like he did 2 weeks ago on our show, but he did throw for 204, and the Dolphins win 23-7. And finally, Monday night at Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh, the Steelers hosting the Houston Oilers. Mike?
Steelers.
I don't think either team's that great at this point. I guess they'll go Pittsburgh since they're at home.
Barry Foster rushed for $115. I think I had him on my fantasy team. And the Steelers with a 30-14 win under the lights. So,
all right, and I have a 7-3 win over Mike Lawrence. I really padded my stats here against you.
Not bad, Mike. Got 3 in the back end there. You did pretty good in the 4 o'clock games.
Yeah.
Turn the tide. You turned the tide.
I'm from South Florida, and I remember listening to morning radio one time, and Dan Marino was on, and this guy was like, "Hey Dan, any tips for my kid who wants to be a quarterback?" And he just goes, "Your kid will never be as good as me."
It's quite the
Great
answer.
Ace Ventura, though.
He is great answer, Ventura. All right. Anything else, Scott?
Yes. Another historic episode as we continue season 5 of Beverly Hills 90210. This episode is called Rave On.
Oh, boy.
It aired on this date, October 5th, 1994. Where there's smoke, there's fire, in Kelly's opinion. At least where Valerie is concerned. Kelly begins to distrust Valerie when she smells Valerie smoking weed in her bedroom, but Kelly cannot convince anyone that the manipulative Valerie is bad news. Both Steve and Brandon refuse to believe Kelly, while Donna doesn't seem to really care either way. That's such a Donna thing. Meanwhile, Steve organizes a 2-night rave party at the Pit. Valerie also begins to suspect the truth about Dylan's financial situation when she sees him pocketing money from the till at the Peach Pit. Oh, boy. Meanwhile, Andrea heads out for a night on the town and spies Jesse flirting on the job. He later takes time off from work to set up a romantic dinner for them at home while their baby sleeps. While working on a video project with David and Claire, Donna meets a musician and carpenter named
Raymond Pruitt.
Raymond Pruitt. Oh, what a tangled web we weave. What a roller coaster begins. Mr. Jamie Walters. How do you talk to an angel, indeed. That evening, I love that fucking song too. That evening, when Kelly begins following / stalking Valerie, hoping to catch her at something to prove herself right, she finds Val at the Peach Pit drinking, smoking cigarettes, and flirting with Dylan in a back storage room. Kelly quickly tells Steve about it, but when they both confront Valerie, she spins it around by saying that Kelly misinterpreted what she saw, claiming that Dylan was making a pass at her. Steve believes Valerie, but Kelly rightfully doesn't. Later that night at the beachfront apartment, Kelly angrily tells Brandon all about what happened, explaining how Valerie so expertly lied to and fooled Steve, and that she is fooling everyone else to the person she really is. Kelly also finally admits that she doesn't like or trust Valerie and never has, but Brandon continues to remain skeptical and casually, in his Brandon way, advises Kelly to give Valerie the benefit of the doubt. At the end, the suspicious Valerie gets Dylan drunk at his home, where he finally confesses to her that he is broke. So another memorable episode, JR, because
not the biggest one though. When you said rave on, I thought it was like the actual rave, but then I remember that's Thanksgiving because that's when Brandon goes to visit Emily Valentine in San Francisco. So
yes. Oh, you're talking about the where she's locked in the bathroom.
The actual rave, because they have the raves at the Peach Pit, but then they want like a different space, so they rent that house, and that's what this all. So this is building to that, but.
Yes, because we haven't. I don't think we've seen Mr. Van Deen yet, right? I don't think he's hopped on this because that has to do with him. Right. Yeah. So there you go. So Ray Pruitt. We begin that roller coaster ride. I didn't realize Claire was in the picture yet. When did that happen? Season 4?
Yeah, because she's in DC when they go. Yeah, because season 4 she started like trying to flirt with Brandon even though she was younger or whatever. Remember?
Right. She was a senior. Right. She was a senior in high school.
Yeah,
she's the daughter. Yeah.
And she's on the trip in DC, like trying to hook up with Brandon when he hooks up with Kelly. So I think season 5 is when she becomes like a regular, moving in with.
Yeah, I love Claire. She's awesome. She's one of my favorites. Mike, are you a viewer? I don't remember if we talked.
I am not. I'm a big Simpson guy, and I was looking. This is the week of my favorite episode ever, Itchy and Scratchy Land. October 2nd. And I remember there's a joke in there where they're like, this bartender looks like John Travolta. And he goes, yeah, it looks like. And then 2 weeks later, Pulp Fiction came out.
Yes. Oh, God. Can't wait to get to that.
Turned his career around, really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did.
But right after that joke.
Spurred up to success.
Yep.
Indeed.
All right. Well, speaking of the heights, why don't we go ahead and talk about the heights that our podcasts are at, because we're delivering great content across all of our network feeds. PlayStation Wrestling feed, which is our OG right here. You listen to it. It's the one that started it all. We also have the PlayStation Pop Experience and then the North-South Connection Podcast Network. All of them feature tremendous podcast content, wrestling, pop culture, and beyond. You get something between the three of them every single day, usually more than one a day if you're looking at all three feeds. And we're super proud of all the content. So be sure to check it out, download, leave us some feedback, of course, as always. And as you mentioned, now to an L, Scott, of course, check out the BH 90210so.podbean.com. That's our 90210 podcast that Tim Capel and I do. We are into season 2, chugging along there. So we have a lot of fun on that show as well.
Yes.
History of Beverly Hills 90210. All right, let's fast forward ahead to 2008 tonight, guys, because it is time to talk some No Mercy. October 5th, 2008, from the Rose Garden in Portland, Oregon. Attendance 9,527, 261,000 buys. The 11th edition of No Mercy, already the 11th edition of 08, would also be the last one until 2016. It's Oregon's second pay-per-view. The last and the first was Unforgiven 2004. You remember that was a big one. This was the first one that broke through the state commission. First pay-per-view there forever. 9908. Shane McMahon announced on a press conference that Raw would air a replay on Televisa in Mexico every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. The time slot was regularly used by CMLL, airing matches from Arena, Mexico prior to that. Beating on September 24th, WWE did a week-long tour of Europe. On September 22nd, Raw was its 800th episode in history. The September 30th ECW was the first one to move to a new time slot of 9 p.m. And on October 2nd, 08, WrestleMania 24 aired as a 1-hour special on My Network TV. Included Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels, the Triple Threat WWE title match, Floyd Mayweather versus Big Show, and Edge versus Undertaker. And then on October 3rd, the next day, was the first episode of SmackDown to air on My Network TV. It had been on CW for 2 years after all the other changeover from UPN, et cetera, et cetera. Here we are now on My Network TV. I think My Network TV is the strangest little run of it because it would get syndicated a bit, actually, during that stretch. I remember for us here, it aired like Fridays at like 11 p.m. or something, or Saturdays. It was a weird time.
Yeah.
But it actually worked well for me because I remember we'd go out a lot and obviously children and all that. We'd go out on the weekends and come back. And it was like the perfect like passing out on the couch at the end of the night show, watching SmackDown at like 11 p.m. So like I didn't mind it. But they're on my TV for a little bit. And then is Sci-Fi next for them?
SmackDown? That's a good question.
Or is there something in between?
Let me see. Let me see.
I got it right here. Okay, so it's UPN on Thursdays, September. So August 99 until September 1st, 05. They're on Thursdays at 8 on UPN.
Correct.
Then they move to Fridays at 8 on UPN for a year. Then it goes to the CW from September 06 to September 08. That's when CW merges, right? Or whatever.
With My Network.
Yeah.
Merges.
It's the WB and UPN. Yeah.
Yep.
Did that become My Network or that became CW? That became CW.
It became CW. Yeah.
UPN and WB. Yeah, okay.
And then
so My Network was something
local
different.
Channels would become My Network, and it was all. I think it was all just like reruns and syndicated stuff. I don't think they had like original programming.
My Network? No, they didn't.
So they're on Fridays on My Network until September of 1st, 2010.
Yeah, October 1st would be the first one on Sci-Fi.
Yeah, and that goes 5 years, almost 4.5 years on Sci-Fi on Fridays. Then it moves to Thursdays on Sci-Fi for a year in 2015. They moved to USA on January 7th, 16, and they're there till 2019 when they go to Fox. So they've had quite the run from network to cable back to network. So
I forgot they went live those 3 years, live on SmackDown Tuesday nights. I totally forgot they did that for those few years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like the Tuesday night SmackDown. I thought it was like too much.
I didn't either.
Back. I like the gap.
Yeah, I agree. CW was in that good stretch in the mid 2000s because they had Smallville, which was like in its prime at that point in 06, 07. And then you had Supernatural and I think Riverdale, So they had a good stretch. They were putting on some good stuff.
Well, 90210 was around there too, right? The reboot, or was that a little bit later?
You know what? Good call. I think 08, that started. I forgot about that reboot.
Riverdale, I think, is like...
That's later, isn't it?
Was it later?
Like 2017, 2018.
Oh, why do I feel like it was so much earlier? Yes.
Because that's when all those actors actually were teenagers.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, actually, season 1 of the 90210 reboot started on September 2nd, 2008.
Okay.
Wow.
We could do those too. No, just kidding. No.
It was all right.
It wasn't it wasn't a bad show. I thought the first like 3 seasons were pretty good. Season 4.
Well, once they kind of got away from the original point was to kind of continue the story a little bit, and they had like Kelly and Brenda was on and Jackie, like they had more of the originals that they phased them out pretty quickly. And really just kind of focused on. They also had Lori Loughlin. They had the guy from Silk Stockings was the dad, so it was quite the cast.
Oh yeah, what the fuck's his name? Rob Estes. Yep.
Yes, and then Annie, the lead, didn't she went nuts or something? Didn't she? Something happened with her. I feel like she went crazy or something in real life.
Shanae Grimes.
Did she have something happen with her? I thought.
Are you thinking of Allison Mack from Smallville?
You're thinking of Allison Mack.
No, I thought Shanae Grimes.
She got involved in the Nexus.
Her and Michael Tarver were a thing, yes.
Yeah,
she might as well. Her and Mason Ryan teaming up.
That would kill anybody's career.
I would watch
no.
an HBO documentary about the Nexus.
The Nexus and Nexum. Yes, if the Nexus were sex slaves, they'd have been a great show. But no.
I guess Sinead Grimes all right. I don't know why I thought something was up with her.
No, Sinead Grimes is fine. No, it was Allison Mack.
Just Wade Barrett going up to a bunch of sex slaves. I've got some bad news.
I'm afraid you're all going to jail.
Sorry, Daniel Bryan choked you with a tie.
Choked you with a tie. Shit. Anyway.
Right. Dark match of the night. The Colognes took on John Morrison and The Miz for the WWE Tag Team titles. And then that sends us into the arena. We have a very odd opening package. It's like a 1950s style into some angry music.
Yeah.
Recaps all the top matches for the night. Todd Grisham and Jerry the King Lawler welcome us into the show. And they're going to call our opening match here this evening, which is for the ECW title. It is Matt Hardy taking on Mark Henry. Scott, how did we come upon this continuation of this feud between these two guys?
Well, on the 9-9 ECW, Matt cut a promo thanking the fans for their support until Henry interrupted and demanded a title match. And the two men would brawl with Matt clearing Henry from the ring, and he would give Atlas the twist of fate. Later in the night, Matt and Finlay defeated Henry and Mike Knox in a tag match when Matt pinned Knox. On the 9-16 ECW, Henry would complain to Atlas that Matt never beat him for the title and again demanded a title match. And Matt would defeat Knox while Henry defeated Finlay, and it was announced that Henry would get his rematch here at the pay-per-view. On the 9-23 ECW, Henry cut a promo on the stage saying that Matt couldn't beat him on a one-on-one match and would take the title back. And on the 9:30 show, Matt and Henry had a confrontation to start. And in the main event, Henry teamed with John Morrison and The Miz to defeat Matt, Evan Bourne, and Ricky Ortiz.
Oh, Big O.
Big O in a 6-man tag match. And now we're here.
All right. Well, Mark Henry and Tony Atlas rumble out looking for that ECW title back around his waist. Very tough first pay-per-view defense for Hardy here. We'll see if it goes better than SummerSlam did. Henry's confident and defiant. He stands in the corner. We get loud Hardy chants as King talks about his throwdowns with Henry a decade ago. Hardy tries to take control early, but Henry barrels him with power offense, heavy strikes, and body blows. Hardy tries to go with the legs, but Henry cuts him down the clothesline. Grisham reminds us that Henry wasn't pinned in the scramble as Hardy finally takes the knee out with a hard shoulder. Henry cuts momentum with a clothesline, but he's hobbling. Hardy keeps coming for the knee. This time he cuts him down, gets to work on it. They spill outside where Henry shoves Hardy to the steps. Hardy keeps coming and going at the leg. Pretty good ebb and flow now as Hardy keeps taking cracks at the knee, but Henry just keeps swatting him off. Feels like a real fight. Henry sit-down splash off the bottom rope, but Hardy stays alive. Henry works a neck vice, gets to a bear hug, comes up empty when he misses another bonsai drop. Hardy mounts his comeback, gets a side effect for 2 for a good near fall. The crowd is all in on it. Henry shoves Hardy hard to the mat, hits a big splash, but he can't cover right away because of his knee. Hardy slips free of a power slam, hits a twist of fate, and defeats Henry clean to a big pop to retain his title. And a pretty fun opener with good pacing and nice structure, a lot of attacks and cutoffs, power strikes from Henry, some really good near falls as well. The crowd was really invested in a pretty strong title match. The reign of Hardy has been off to a good start, Scott. I went 2 3/4.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. I just lost my page. Hold on. Your match time was 8:08, so decent little stretch. Yeah, solid matchup. I gave it 2. Where'd my line go? Hold on. 2.5. I gave it. I figured I gave it 2.5. Yeah. Again, and I mentioned this on our last show. Even though Jeff, it's typical for these two. Jeff Hardy is the shiny toy that everybody loves, but Matt Hardy is that guy you can always count on when he's on his game to give you solid in, solid out. Mark Henry, I feel like doesn't really reach his total big time potential until he hits like 2010-ish, but still here he's got that feel. He's strong. Personality wise, I love the Tony. I said this before. I like the Tony Atlas combo. I'm glad Matt they didn't just drop it back after the scramble.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad Matt kept it. It makes him look strong, Mike. Solid match, nothing offensive, nothing crazy, but a good start to the show.
Yeah, I thought it was decent. Tony Atlas as a manager, it was like amazing. He's so huge. Like, he comes out in like this suit and looks like when Mr. Incredible is at his office job. And there was, I don't know. I mean, I'm one of those, like, I wasn't the biggest like ECW fan in the 90s, but at the same time, like, at this point in 2008, when it's just two die-in-the-wool WWE guys, it feels like it doesn't have much of an identity. It just feels like another, like any secondary title. You know, it was decent, but not that much stake. So I went. It was the lowest on this, but I went 2.
Yeah, ECW's in a weird spot. Like, I think they're using the name because they built this brand up, but it's definitely become, in ways, it's not far off from the original ECW. Like, the presentation and style is different, but the idea behind using it for bringing new guys up while also kind of rehabbing other dudes that had nothing else to do. It's kind of in the spirit, right? Because they're using guys like Henry and Hardy, but they're also bringing up guys like Miz and Morrison and Kingston are coming, Punk, they're all coming through there. So it's an interesting usage of it, for sure. So, all right, JR and Taz are here. They ask for votes in tonight's poll. They say, who are you rooting for, Triple H or Jeff Hardy? Eve Torres is then backstage. She brings in both Triple H and Hardy. Hunter's on his phone. He cuts off Hardy to say the only thing Hardy's going to win tonight is the mobile poll. And even he voted for Jeff. Hardy says to worry about him and not texting. Hunter puts him over, says he wants to see Hardy put it all together and be all he can be for one night. And he's doing it, so when he beats Hardy, he'll beat the best Hardy has. Hardy says he will take pride in taking the title off of Triple H. Head back to the ring for our women's title match as Beth Phoenix takes on Candice Michelle, Scott.
All right, well, on the 9/8 Raw, it was announced that Michelle would get a title shot at No Mercy, and Phoenix would retain the title over Mickie James before having a stare down with Michelle. The following week on 9/15, Michelle defeated Jillian Hall, while Phoenix watched from ringside, and Michelle challenged to come in the ring, only to hit a drop kick that sent Phoenix to the floor. The following week on 9/22, Phoenix was upset by Kelly after a miscue from Santino Marella, while Michelle watched from backstage. Of course, that little whatever is going on there. And finally, on 9/29, Phoenix and Hall defeated Michelle and Kelly in a tag match where Phoenix got the pin back on Kelly. So pretty straightforward as we head to this show and this match.
And out come Glamorella, Beth and Santino for this match. Beth looking strong, leading the way. We now have Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler on the booth as King is hopped back over to the Raw table. Candice struts out, looking to get back on top of the division. She's still coming back from that bad injury. Candice catches Beth off guard, being aggressive and bringing the fight to her. Beth eventually settles and uses her power to drive Candice to the corner. Candice punches back, but Beth batters the shoulder. Candice tries to fend Beth off, but Beth grinds the rehabbed shoulder joint. Candice doesn't give in and eventually crotches Beth on the top and drop kicks her as she slinks down. Santino pulls Candice outside, but Candice drop kicks him. Beth mows down Candice with a clothesline on the floor, but back inside she's arguing with Santino. Candice rolls her up for 2. Beth counters with an unprettier with a glam slam to finish off Candice. It was fine. Beth's power offense and instincts are growing. She's able to carry things. Scott, we talked about last month with SmackDown. They didn't have that kind of buoying force, right, to kind of drive the match, but Beth has become that for Raw. Candice is a bit rusty, but good enough in her first match. Her assault and constant comebacks are good as a plucky face. Beth continues to dominate. Mike, I went 2 stars on this one. Again, Beth is really putting it together as we go forward here.
Yeah, and the Glamorella act is a lot of fun, and kind of carried the match. I remember the Diva search. I didn't realize Candice was around this long.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of a surprise to me. And I mean, watching it's not their fault, but like watching a lot of the women's matches in this era, when you know what's to come with the 4 horsewomen and all that, it's kind of like playing Atari when you have a PS5 right next to it.
Yes.
And but for what it was, and it was decent enough. I'll go 1.5.
Yeah, I went 2 on this. I really complimented Candice Michelle a lot in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember those matches, JR, when she was champion, she gave the best. She did the best she could. She was going she was setting herself up. She had a pretty basic move set, but she wasn't making a lot of mistakes. And now she's taking on an even better worker in Beth Phoenix, clearly the best worker on Raw and probably top 3 in the company. And it shows that Beth is trying to elevate the rest of. See, that's the problem with someone inexperienced like Michelle McCool as Divas champion on SmackDown. The point of one of the points of having a champion is to help elevate. And Beth Phoenix is experienced and talented enough that she can elevate, and she's trying to do that. And I feel like this match does that. Whereas on SmackDown, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. So I think this is a really good match. And right now, if we're keeping score, Raw clearly the better women's division.
All right, Kane is backstage. He issues a warning to Rey Mysterio and makes a statement about hiding behind masks. That brings us to the ring for Rey Mysterio taking on Kane. Scott, how do we march to this match?
Well, as mentioned, the stipulation is if Rey Mysterio loses this match, he must unmask. Of course, not the first time he's had to deal with this stip, as he had to deal with it years earlier in WCW. On the 9/8 Raw, Mysterio cut a promo on Kane attacking him and said he was no one's victim, and later that night he would team with Evan Bourne to defeat John Morrison and The Miz. After the match, Kane appeared on the Titantron and held up his own mask as he cut a promo on facing Mysterio next week on Raw. On the 9/15 Raw, Kane appeared wearing his old mask before taking it off and cutting a promo on Mysterio, and later that night Mysterio defeated Kane by DQ, and Kane attacked him until Bourne made the save. On 9/22, Kane went to Mike Adamle and demanded a match with Mysterio at the pay-per-view, which Adamle agreed to, and later that night he defeated Bourne in a match, and when Mysterio tried to make the save, Kane laid him out and called him a coward for wearing a mask. And finally, on 9/29, Kane teamed with Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase, and as we talked about in the last show, Manu, to defeat Mysterio, Bourne, and Kofi Kingston and CM Punk in an 8-man tag. And later that night, Mike Adamle declared the pay-per-view match would have the added stip that Mysterio would have to unmask if he lost.
All right, see how it plays out. Mysterio comes out to a big pop, big challenge lying ahead. Kane is not happy, wants to prove a point. Cole reminds us the months of torture at Kane's hands. Kane marches out with a smirk, comes right at Rey, but Rey's able to kick him to the floor. Kane returns and mows him down with a big boot. Rey makes Kane chase him, lands a flurry of kicks, sticking to moving, but Kane swats him away. Rey goes for a kill strike with a 619, but Kane wrecks him with a brutal clothesline. Things spill outside. Rey keeps looking for an angle in, but Kane is too strong. Eventually just flips him into the barricade and into the fans. Back inside, Kane continues to slam Rey hard to the mat, stomps and slugs at him as Rey screaming in pain. Kane tries some different punishing holds on the neck and back, but Rey keeps fighting his way back into the match. He heats up and catches Kane with a top rope moonsault that knees Kane in the head. He follows a springboard guillotine leg drop for 2, but runs right into a sidewalk slam. Rey slips out of a chokeslam, gets a springboard bulldog, and it hurts his knee. Rey comes off the top, but Kane knocks him down. Kane misses a charge, and Rey hits a 619 to the back and knocks him to the floor. Rey leaps off the top, but Kane meets him with a nasty chair shot on the way down and draws a DQ to boos. I enjoyed this. I thought it was a good big versus little, which always kind of hits well when they crank on it. Kane kept hitting the big offense. Rey's speed was on point, pinballing around. The finish was okay. Keeps Kane strong, keeps Rey's mask on, plays into Kane being a sick fuck, just wanting to hurt him, and it obviously keeps the feud going. Sky went 2 3/4. I thought they over-delivered a bit with their chemistry on this one.
They definitely did, and we would see that a couple years later as well. I gave it 2.5. I thought it was a good big versus little, nothing offensive. I think that WWE, even Vince, who doesn't have much respect for much, I don't think even he would ever take Rey's mask off after the bullshit in WCW. Mm-hmm. So anytime there's an unmasking gimmick with Rey, I always feel like Rey's going to win because he's just going to. I just don't think WWE would ever have done that to him. So having said that, I mean, I knew Rey was going to win. It was just a question of the road to get there. And I enjoyed the match. Kane, at this point, 11 years into his career, is just a good hand, particularly a power hand, whether he's a heel or a face. I think he's perfectly good. And, it's a good drama thing. But Mike, the anticipation didn't it never happened for me because I just knew that Ray wasn't going to lose. But having said that, it was a good big versus little.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of a stip match where one guy has a thing at stake, but the other doesn't. I thought that was kind of weird, So if Kane loses, he just loses. And
Right, yeah.
Kane lost all the time. But I thought that, in terms of the work rate and just the back and forth of it, it was fun. I don't love DQ finishes, especially in the more modern era, when you have your big stars wrestling on TV every week. But I enjoyed it. I would go 2.5. This was the kind of match I would play in the video game, and it was great. Like, here comes the pain, because you couldn't do most of your slams and moves on Kane if you were Rey Mysterio. So it was very realistic to this.
Man, those video games in that stretch were on point for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Definitely.
All right, JR and Taz plug the mobile poll again, and then we head backstage. MVP is on the phone. He's complaining about not having a match. He goes over to the SmackDown GM locker room, and Big Show answers the door. MVP wants to talk to Vicky, but Show basically tells him to fuck off, says he's got bigger things to focus on. Vicky calls Show, and he slams the door, and MVP walks off. MVP then heads to the ring. He says, you don't sit LeBron, Manny, or MVP. It says, Undertaker Tombstone has affected Vicky's head, but this time wasn't the first time. It won't be the last, because the universe revolves around MVP. Randy Orton's music hits, and he saunters out. MVP introduces himself to Orton and says he's what MVP claims to be, and maybe MVP should ask himself if there's a reason this happens every month. MVP says he doesn't recognize Orton without his sling and his MRI results, and this happens because Vicky's incompetent. It's hard to make the plays when he doesn't get the ball. Orton says if MVP ever gets the ball, he'd drop it anyway because he's seen him in action, like at WrestleMania when Orton won the main event and MVP lost as usual. MVP says he's not on Raw and there's no repercussions for knocking Orton out. Everyone on Raw would love it if he did it. Out come Cody Rhodes, Teddy DiBiase, and Manu. The crowd chants boring, and Cody kind of plays it off, telling him to stop. Says Randy's not boring. Says Randy's the guy who just hung out in his old town trying to be cool instead of going to college. Tells MVP to let Orton coast on his reputation because that's all he has left. Orton tells Rhodes to ask Punk if he's just coasting. Manu says the only reason Orton had a chance to kick Punk in the head is because they attacked him first, and all Orton did was pick up the scraps. Orton says they're trying hard to impress him, and maybe if they accomplish half of what he has, he'd start taking him seriously. Orton leaves. MVP mocks him for leaving and says maybe he'll return in 2012. DiBiase says he knows MVP's dad was not a great star, so he isn't in their class. MVP doesn't like that. It says he makes more money than all three combined, but DiBiase says, hey, my dad's $1 million man. I never have to worry about money. He tells MVP to get out of the ring, and they'll see him at the next pay-per-view he gets shut out of. MVP heads out cautiously. He says he'll remember this conversation. As he leaves, Punk's music hits. He comes out with Kofi Kingston. Punk says he has an idea. He says MVP wants on the pay-per-view, and the three guys in the ring all dissed him. MVP's game. They charge the ring, but Kofi and Punk stop. MVP goes in alone and gets beaten down, and eventually Punk and Kofi come in and help clean house. So, I don't know, Scott. I thought it was a good segment in general, but it was too long. The crowd definitely got annoyed. I think they could have condensed this better. And instead of having 3 different acts play out, they could have just kind of had it all happen at once. I think maybe a little cleaner. But they did further a lot of stuff. Like Orton as like this teacher role is pretty interesting, where he's basically like he's back from injury, but kind of telling everyone why they're not on his level and speaking the truth about it, right? And we've talked about it recently. Like, what's MVP going to do now? I think these types of angles are never successful for guys, so I'm a little nervous where they're headed with MVP. When you start getting left off pay-per-views and complaining about it, like, usually isn't a good thing. So we'll see where that heads. Punk gets a little revenge, messing with MVP a little bit. And we further DiBiase and Rhodes and Manu trying to continue to impress Orton, even though they're shit-talking here. It's clear that they're trying to get his attention. So kind of a lot going on, but again, I think it dragged down a little too long. It was basically a Raw segment.
Yeah, I think it was just to get them on TV or get them on camera. But otherwise, yeah, this seemed Punk just looks, it's bad right now. That it didn't look good. It didn't look good for him getting punked, no pun intended, out at Unforgiven, out of to defend his own title in the scramble. And now suddenly he's like hanging with Kofi, who's, popular, but no more than mid-card at this point. So it just doesn't look good for him. Orton still looks like a badass. Like he looks still like an alpha dog, even though he's hurt. Whereas Punk still looks like sadly looks like like a hanger-on or a wannabe. And that's the disappointing part, Mike, is the whole promo still makes Punk look like a chump. And Orton, and I think Orton kind of almost made MVP kind of look bad as well, almost too much. It was a very imbalanced segment that probably went on a little too long for the show.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Justin on this, of just like, especially this is when you were paying for pay-per-views.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like now with the premium live events and all of that, okay, have a promo segment, get a bunch of people on, but this was what, like $30, $40, $50,
right?
And this is just filler. I didn't mind some of it, but it was funny that like MVP's like, I'm not on the show, and then all these other guys who aren't on the show are also in this segment. Like none of them are on the show. And Orton being the big star he is, I guess he was right. He was healing at this point from an injury. Because it's like, why wouldn't he be in a match, or Punk or some of these guys? It felt a little messy. But overall, yeah, you could have cut this in half. Or you could have I would have just done a match. Why not have MVP and, Kingston and Punk versus Manu, Rhodes, and DiBiase. Right. Just do that.
Yeah, you could have definitely done something to make it a match, even if they did a quick promo into a quick match or more of a brawl. I mean, I think they're doing a lot of this to get Orton on TV before he's cleared. He's hasn't been cleared fully for action, but the last two pay-per-views now he showed up and played a role. So I think that's why they're doing this partially. But yeah, you have Punk, you have Kofi, you have Orton and Rhodes. You could even do a tag title match with those four guys and have Orton, shit talk them before the match or whatever. And maybe MVP complains, why isn't he out? So you could have done a little bit more and still had a match within it. But
yeah, within the same amount of time.
Yeah, it definitely felt more like a Raw segment for sure. All right, JR Taz thanked Metallica for the theme song. They plugged the poll again. We see Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho prepping backstage. Then we head back to the ring for our next match, which is Batista taking on JBL. Scott, how do we get here?
Well, because it is Batista, there's obviously something attached to this, and that is the winner of this match is the number one contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. On the 9-8 Raw, JBL and Chris Jericho defeated Batista in a handicap match, only for Batista to attack JBL and Lance Cade after the match while Jericho watched from the ramp. The following week on 9-15, both Batista and JBL went to GM Mike Adamle about being the number one contender, and later in the night, Jericho claimed neither man was worthy enough, though convinced Adamle to have the two men face off at the pay-per-view to determine who is the number one contender. That same night, JBL defeated Tommy Dreamer in a squash and cut a promo that saw Randy Orton, Santino Marella, Beth Phoenix, and Batista all come out, and in the end, Batista would wipe out Marella with a spinebuster and then give Phoenix a spinebuster on top of Marella, which is pretty funny. On the 9-22 Raw, JBL teamed with Jericho and Cade to defeat Batista and Shawn Michaels in a handicap match. And finally, on 9-29, JBL attacked Batista after his win over Marella and gave him the clothesline from hell. And later that night, JBL ranted about losing his money in the stock market, only for Batista to come out and give him a spear. So there we go.
Big match, title shot on the line. Both guys have been lingering in the title picture all year. Not a lot of success. JBL rides out first, stomps to the ring. Cole runs down his resume. We get a big pop for Batista as he powers out looking for yet another title shot. JBL comes in hot with punches. Batista turns the tide and beats on him with strikes. Batista dodges a clothesline from hell and spears JBL, but he rolls to the floor. King is making all sorts of stock market jokes through this. We get a clunky skirmish on the apron. Batista tumbles outside as JBL gets to work, gets some shots in and a chinlock, but Batista powers right back, bullies through him with punches and clotheslines. JBL counters a spear with a boot, but Batista shrugs it off, hits a spinebuster, and finishes him with the Batista bomb. Complete squash city out of nowhere here. Did not expect this at all. JBL had minimal offense. Batista was dominant, just crushing him. this is great booking. It's the way to go for sure. Good on JBL to do it, and a really well done slugfest in a sprint form, Mike. We'll get to the post match in a minute, but for the match itself, I went 2 1/4, and I thought this is the right way to go. Put Batista over strong for the next title shot. JBL can lay down without much, losing much steam, and we don't need to plod through a 12-minute match. Like, just have Batista wipe them out.
Yeah, I agree. This was fun little sprint, and this 2 big power guys, and I mean, this is crazy. This was 2008. This around the time this show happened was when the Guardians of the Galaxy first formed in the comics with the version that Batista would end up playing as Drax. So that's kind of amazing to me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny timing.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we'll talk about the post match in a sec, because that to me is a little more fun. But yeah, this was good for what it was. And yeah, if you're gonna put the guy over, put him over. And I mean, this was at the point in the show, and knowing what some of the matches going forward were, just the amount of star power on this show is pretty insane.
Yes, definitely. Your match time, just 5:18. Actually, looking back a bit, the Kane Ray match was 10:10. Didn't seem like that. This match was 5:18. I gave it 2 stars. I mean, it was a fine little Haas match. I mean, Batista is the hotter guy. I mean, JBL's star is definitely dulled, and he's just there as a body. It was good. It was a quick sprint. Batista's just a guy that makes main event matches look good. I mean, he's really earned that over the last 3 years. And he gets a zillion title shots, but there's a reason why, because he makes it feel special. So he's earned that right. And I think I'm curious because it does kind of add some intrigue for later in the night, because obviously, Shawn and Batista had some issues earlier in the year. So it does kind of add a little intrigue to the match later in the night, because there's no backstory as far as I can remember between Batista and Jericho, but there was definitely obviously history between Batista and Shawn, to the point where you could easily see what goes on later in the night. So, I think it's a great result, a nice quick squash, and Batista's on his way.
Yeah, and I agree, Mike. It's a sneaky loaded year. All these shows have so much star power and big names. I think it's when you think of this era, you tend to think, oh, it's headed downhill. It's a downturn. It's not as good as it used to be. But I think we're in the final days of it for sure. But the shows are absolutely still loaded at this point with names. I think by 2010 it fades, but we're still there with like tons of big stars.
Yeah, when you're squeezing all those guys that you did in that last segment, and then giving these 2 guys a quick match, and rightfully so, because of these next 3 matches, it's just like, I was like, wow. And then we had Kane and Mysterio. It's pretty crazy.
All right, JBL gets on the mic after the match. He's shell-shocked. He said he expected to win, but he has to be honest to his fans. His heart wasn't in it tonight. After the past week on Wall Street, he's the most blessed man on earth. Thanks to Congress, they're shelling out billions so people like him could keep their money. It was for the good of the country, because people like him employ people like the fans. He rambles on more about that, and then Crime Time show up on the screen from backstage. They say they decided to bail out JBL's limo, and then they jack it and fill it with dancing divas and Sergeant Slaughter. Head out in the town. So, I mean, this was funny. I thought JBL was funny. Like, it was a good satire on what was going on at that time in the economy, bailing out the billionaires. But that said, this felt like more time wasting. That could have been that match, Mike, right? We've been talking about. So it's like, we had that long segment earlier. We got this. Like, why can't we trim those and have gotten the tag title match, right?
Yeah, this felt like a house show promo, and then the Crime Time stuff. I love that Crime Time is just the more money guys from In Living Color. That's literally the gimmick. But JBL's reaction was pretty great, and I love that it's all these divas and then just Sergeant Slaughter.
Yes, so random.
You just pop in, hey, stolen limousine, stolen valor, right? When I found out he was never actually in the war, it blew my mind, and
I know.
I thought I was like, I know there's some things in wrestling that are kayfabe and some that aren't, but that I believed in. But I like this more than the last promo segment. This was fun, and JBL did a great job. And I mean, it felt timely at the time, but I mean, that recession is something we still talk about. So it's pretty amazing to have it immortalized in a pro wrestling segment.
Any thoughts on the promo?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny, considering the moment. It just makes JBL look like a goof. But again, this is a skit for Raw. I think we don't have time for this right now. And as Mike said, I mean, yeah, the roster is loaded. There's a lot of damn good workers right now. We don't have time for shitty promos and gags. We can get to this shit, on Raw. We have no time for this. Just Batista win and move on. And I don't see what else we need. All
right, video package for our next match, which is The Undertaker taking on Big Show. We know that this kind of triggered at our last pay-per-view, Scott, but what's happened since Unforgiven?
Well, since Unforgiven, let's see. I'm just pinning my screen down here. Here we go. On the 822 SmackDown, Vicky Guerrero said that all her actions over the months was because of Edge, and she was proud to have Taker back. And later that night, La Familia welcomed Taker back, only for Taker to say that he was coming for Vicky's soul as he wiped out La Familia. The following week on SmackDown, Taker cut a promo saying he wouldn't forgive Vicky and would drag her to hell as she watched from her office, and La Familia would abandon her as she called out for help, only for the lights to go out in her office at the end of the show. On the 9-4 SmackDown, Taker again vowed to send Vicky to hell as Vicky came out during a stare down between Vladimir Kozlov and the Big Show, and she threatened to fine and suspend Show if he didn't leave, which he did, and she said she wasn't intimidated by Taker, as she said he would apologize to her at Unforgiven. We all know what happened at Unforgiven. On the 9-12 SmackDown, Show and Vicky cut a promo in the ring as Show said that Taker would have to follow the rules as his partnership with Vicky would earn him a title shot, and Vicky her apology from Taker. On the 9-19, Show replayed the footage from Unforgiven to prove that Taker wouldn't be there, and at the end of the night, Chavo Guerrero would watch the footage only for Taker to appear behind him and choke him out. On Raw, that following Monday, the 22nd, it was announced that Taker and Show would face off at the pay-per-view. On the 9/26 SmackDown, Chavo told Vicky that Taker told him that he would find Vicky, and at the end of the night, Vicky, Show, and Chavo were in the ring and said that Taker was afraid the lights would go out, and when they came back on, Chavo was gone, and Taker would appear on the Titantron, attacking Chavo, which prompted Show to go to the back, and the lights went out again as Taker appeared in the ring when they came on, and he would give Vicky the tombstone, which was kind of a cool moment. And on the 10-3 SmackDown, Show put himself in charge and forced Chavo to face Mark Henry and the Great Khali in a handicap match. And after the match, Show cut a promo on Taker until the lights went out, with Show going up the aisle, and Taker appeared in the ring when the lights came on. So fairly serendipitous as we get here.
All right. Tale as old as time, these two. Back at it. Big Show's flip-flops to the feud with Taker. This time over SmackDown Control and Power Plays. Show saunters out solo, still hoping to get back on track. Been scuffling a bit since that hot return. Usual intense Undertaker entrance as he floats to the ring. Taker brings the heat right away with punches, but Show answers back with a shot to the ribs. Taker punches back, but Show pushes through and batters the ribs some more, shoots him into the barricade. Taker punches back into it, controls for a minute until he runs into a big shoulder block. Show keeps slugging in the ribs, pushing through Taker's comebacks and hitting more heavy shots. Two big hostiles just really trying to punch each other out. Show comes up empty on a Vader bomb, and then Taker starts to use his speed a bit, hits the ropes and into a flying clothesline. Show blocks Old School and hits a chokeslam for 2. Taker battles back again, ends up hitting a DDT for a close 2. The crowd's very invested here. As we move along, Taker's unloading, but Show pulls off the turnbuckle cover and runs Taker into it, and then knocks him out with 2 punches to the head and 1 to the back of the head for a very shocking clean win as the ref calls for the bell. Taker's woozy, slow to get up, and leaves as the crowd chants him on. So another shocking finish here with Show knocking Taker out. It's the win he needed to get back on track, no doubt. Pretty fun brawling battle. Felt like a heavyweight fight, just filled with big punches and counter punches into the finish. And this is absolutely the way to rehab Show. Just let him pound the shit out of Taker and go over strong. I mean, if you're trying to build him back up, this is it. So we'll see where it goes. But Scott, I went 3 stars. I thought it was a pretty fun Haas battle.
I gave it 2 3/4. It was all right. I don't know. I just wasn't really in the mood for this. I don't know. Kind of lost my vim. I just have this bad feeling that this is just going to end up being more blah. Your match time was 10:04. I don't know. It was fine. I just kind of felt like this is just holdover slop. Edge is hurt. He's out. So Taker Big Show's just kind of a bookmark. And I mean, it was okay, but I just didn't have the energy for it. I feel like it's just a feud that's just there. I feel like maybe Taker's in a really weird place right now in 2008. He might be I know the roster's loaded, Mike, but I feel like Taker is not able to take advantage of a loaded roster, and he's kind of floating aimlessly on SmackDown with Jeff Hardy and Triple H at the top. Taker's just kind of waddling around with everybody else.
Yeah. I don't know if this was in Taker's book. Chapter
Tombstone
23.
Yeah.
It was the worst of times. I mean, yeah, this is one of those feuds that you're just like, will this ever end? Like, how many times has it happened? But the finish was cool.
Yeah.
That rabbit punch, like, that was awesome. And I liked, the 2 big hosses. I mean, going from like Batista and JBL to a slightly longer version of that in this, but with a different, ending and everything. I think that's part of why they did the JBL Batista thing and made it kind of a squash, and then had JBL get humiliated, because the heels kind of dominate the rest of the show, and you kind of needed a crowd pleasing moment, because this was fun, but as like a big Taker fan, I'm sure a lot of people in the crowd were, and this is an audience that doesn't get a lot of live big events like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably kind of a bummer to watch someone you love so much, the slayer of big fat guys get beaten by a big fat guy.
Yeah, I mean, they're into it for sure. And it does feel like a big deal, at least, when this happens, because Taker has been so protected. I'm not as negative into this feud as you are, Scott. Like, I'm kind of giving the benefit of the doubt. At first, I was kind of like, but I actually think they've delivered. Like, the fight at Unforgiven was pretty good. And I enjoyed this quite a bit, actually. Like, it caught me off guard and makes me wonder what's to come. So we haven't really gotten Taker versus show, like, with modern Taker and in shape show. So, it's a rehash, but it's kind of a different take on it, given where they're at, respectively, in the ring and physically. So we'll see how it rolls along. But
that would have been amazing if they changed his name from Big Show to In Shape Show.
Yes.
In Shape Show tonight.
Physically healthy show.
Well, he's a moderately
slightly overweight
age and size show.
All right, JR Taz revealed the poll results. Jeff Hardy wins with 72%. And that brings us to a video package for our next match for the WWE Championship. Triple H defending against Jeff Hardy. Scott, tell us how we got to this point.
Well, it has been a very interesting journey. Let's see. On the 9/12 SmackDown. Let's see. I'm sure I get to there. There we go. On the 9/12 SmackDown, Triple H talked about being the only champion to retain it Unforgiven when Jeff came out, and they went back and forth as Triple H said that Jeff always came close to grabbing the brass ring, only to fail, and that without Matt, he wouldn't stay on the straight path. While Jeff brought up that Triple H had what he had for being in certain families. Ooh. At the end of the night, Jeff defeated Shelton Benjamin, the Brian Kendrick, and Montel Vontavious Porter in a fatal four-way to earn a title match at No Mercy. After the match, Vladimir Kozlov came out and attacked Hardy before hitting an inverted DDT. On the 9/19 SmackDown, Jeff talked about Triple H's words last week and said that it was giving him more motivation, and he would defeat Kendrick in a match only for Kozlov to come out and attack him again. At the end of the night, Triple H defeated MVP in a match only for Kozlov to come out and attack him as well. On the 9/26 SmackDown, Jeff and Triple H defeated MVP and Kendrick in a tag match as Jeff gave Triple H the title and they shook hands. And later in the night, Kozlov fought the Great Khali in no contest when Triple H got involved, and the two men beat him down as well as Jeff, who tried to make the save. On the 10/3 SmackDown, Jeff teamed with Batista, Rey Mysterio, and Finlay to defeat JBL, Kane, MVP, and Kendrick in an 8-man tag. And in the main event, Triple H defeated Chris Jericho and Matt Hardy in a battle of champions. After the match, Jeff made the save for Triple H against Jericho, only to give him the twist of fate. But then Kozlov came out and laid both Jeff and Triple H out. There we go.
All right. This one's been building for a while. Hardy is back in position to finally cash in after suspension. Big pop as he dances out, feeling more and more like a star. Good reaction for Hunter, too, as he rolls through, completing his full strong year since winning the belt back a year ago at No Mercy. After a handshake, Hardy turns and Hunter attacks and almost snags a quick win. They reset with a chuckle. Hunter works the arm. We ease through some standing holds and feeling out. They transition back and forth as we slowly edge along. Hunter tries to start to power up, but Hardy picks up the pace and cleans him out to the floor. Hardy controls back inside, bridging between getting reckless and staying steady and a step ahead, but he almost walks into a pedigree, blocks it, and dumps Hunter to the floor. Hunter turns the tide outside as Hardy whiffs on a somersault plancha, splats out on the floor. He finally took that chance and missed it. Back inside, Hunter starts to batter the back with some snap offense. Good job targeting with heavy stuff, grabbing some near falls. He goes to an abdominal stretch, dissecting Hardy. Hardy comes back with a clothesline takedown, starts to pepper the champ with drop kicks and quick hits. Hunter bails out. Hardy meets him with a somersault plancha, hits this time. It's a great payoff to earlier. Hardy keeps plowing into Hunter in the ring. Hunter counters a twist of fate with a lariat for 2. Hunter takes a rare risk. Hardy counters and gets a gourd buster for a close 2. Hunter takes Hardy down hard on his back and hits a spine buster as the crowd is fully into Hardy now. Hunter sets up the pedigree, but Hardy counters into a slingshot. Hunter hits the post. Hardy hits the whisper in the wind for a super close number 2 with the crowd edging hard. Hardy fires off up the pin and heads up top. He misses the swanton. Hunter loads the pedigree, but Hardy counters into a twist of fate. He goes up top and hits the swanton, but as he covers, Hunter cradles through and pins Hardy to win and retain the title to great heat. As Hardy comes up just short again. A great match. The pacing was perfect. Both guys are on point. Really good back and forth. And the final minutes were fantastic. The crowd is fully invested. Hunter finds a way to win, but it keeps Hardy on his level as he barely sneaks it out. It didn't just flatten him. This is really well done. Hunter keeps rolling. Hardy obviously will be back. Mike, going 4 stars. This is a really good match. Even though we don't get Hardy winning, he keeps really pretty much on even pace here.
Yeah, this was fun. I never remember Hardy being this physically big.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like pretty comparable to Triple H. I don't know if he was on the main event juice at the time or not, but I was.
He's
surprised.
definitely bulking up somehow. Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah, right. Because I'm like, this is not like your typical skinny jeans, early 2000s Hardy. I mean, he was filling out the jeans and just buff, but I thought this was fun. Like this, and this was like one of those, oh, this is a fun matchup. Like I remember seeing this when it happened, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen those two guys. And they really, pulled off a really fun match. And I think on a lot of other pay-per-views of this era, this itself could have been a main event. I went 3.5 stars, but then we get Vladimir Kozlov afterwards, and take back what I said about star power.
I gave this 4 stars. This was terrific. Your match time 17:02, so pretty good time. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a fun back and forth. Jeff Hardy really focused. Like, this is the first time I feel in the time I've watched him that he focused. Like, he wrestled a main event match and not just a upgraded mid-card match. Like, he wrestled like this was it for him. And I think that's fantastic. And Triple H just like kind of went with the flow, and he worked it well. And this babyface run is better than any of the more annoying ones he ever had in this time, like when he came back in 2002. This fits better. Like, this is just, hey, I'm me. It's kind of like Steve Austin, but not as ornery in the sense that he's not overly, he's just facing heels rather than being an over babyface, acting like a babyface per se. But you know, the match just showed how amazing Jeff Hardy can be when he's focused. And it was a fantastic match. I didn't think Jeff was going to win. I feel like they were going to make it something a little more special. I didn't, it's funny. I didn't hate Vladimir Kozlov. They have to create stars. I mean, they used to make fun of the fact that his tights were too tight, but, they look like fucking jacked up underwear. But the fact remained, he was a pretty good heel. He was doing decent squashes. And they were trying to build something up, but we'll see what happens from there. But kudos to Jeff Hardy, who wrestled like his life depended on it, and it was a main event match. It was not a amplified mid-card match. He wrestled a main event match. Mm-hmm. And I give him all the credit in the world to hang with one of the best and put on a great, great title match.
You know what really stuck out in this, too, was JR's call at the end.
Yeah.
Like, when he gets that very, screamy, and he doesn't do it a lot, so it means something when he does, and he's like, come on, kid! Like, it made it feel like a WrestleMania moment, even. Like, it was this big moment, and it added to, the deflation of, and obviously this feud would continue because it felt like it ended on a cliffhanger. It was really good storytelling.
Yeah, I think the tricky part now is going to be for them is when do you pull the trigger? Because it's still okay. They're building it well. He's getting closer and closer. And Hunter's been really good over the last year. But at some point, you're going to hit that inflection point of, okay, it's this Triple H burying a guy again, right? So, what is that tipping point of when, okay, now is the time to pull the trigger on Hardy before it gets to be, okay, we missed the window, and it's just Triple H again. So I'll be curious to see when that happens as we go forward. All right, Arn Anderson's backstage. He congratulates Hunter. Arn says he thought Hardy had him. Hunter says it's only a matter of time. This is where Kozlov comes in. He stares at Hunter, gives him a warning in Russian, and then congratulates him, and they just keep staring at each other until Kozlov leaves. So it looks like maybe we're setting up Kozlov for Hunter here for sure. We get a video package for our main event, and that is Chris Jericho defending the World Heavyweight title against Shawn Michaels in a ladder match. Scott, tell us how we got to this point.
Oh my. At this point, we should all know how we got to this point because it has been very well documented. On the 9/8 Raw, my screen just flipped. Hold on. On the 9/8 Raw, Jericho showed off the scars from the previous night, but claimed that he was the ultimate victor. He was now world champion, and Michaels beat him in a non-sanctioned match, which doesn't count, so nobody cares. Later in the night, Jericho teamed with JBL to defeat Batista in a handicap match. On the 9/15 Raw, Jericho defeated CM Punk in a cage match to retain the title. At the end of the night, it was revealed that Michaels would get the title shot at No Mercy, and it would be a ladder match. On the 9/22 Raw, Jericho cut a promo on top of a ladder and vowed to remain champion until Randy Orton interrupted and reminded him that he took out Punk at Unforgiven, which led to Jericho becoming champion. At the end of the night, Jericho teamed with Kane and JBL to defeat Michaels and Batista in a handicap match. And finally, on the 9/29 Raw, Michaels talked about facing Jericho and Cade later that night in a tag match, and Cade would cut a promo on pinning Michaels last week. And in the main event, Michaels teamed with Triple H to defeat Jericho and Cade by DQ. After the match, Jericho would bring out a ladder only for Triple H to hit Cade with a sledgehammer, and Michaels give him sweet chin music into a pedigree from Triple H, and Michaels would come off the ladder with an elbow onto Cade as Jericho watched from the stage. And incidentally, Mr. Meltzer would name this match of the year. So.
All right, let's see if we agree. Here we go. Another chapter in this epic feud been filled with classic matches and moments. Jericho climbed from Lost in the Woods to world champion as it went. Jericho stoic and focused. He comes out. Michaels matches his intensity, a shot at revenge and the belt. In the match, both have really excelled at in the past. We start fast with a flurry that ends with Michaels ramming his shoulder into the post after missing a charge. Jericho pours it on from there, hammering away, hits a springboard shoulder block to take things outside. Michaels springs off the ladder outside and hammers away. They fight over the ladder. Michaels ends up seesawing it into Jericho to slow him down. Jericho accidentally springs Michaels into the ladder and he quickly scales, but Jericho tips him off hard into the ropes. Jericho uses the ladder and starts to slowly pummel Michaels while recovering. focusing on the ribs and back. Jericho misses a charge. He slams hard into the ladder. Now his knee is messed up. Shawn gets to work on it, slamming the steel, but Jericho finds a way to grab control. He bounces off the ladder, bounces the ladder off the post and rebounds into Shawn's face in a 6 spot. Jericho batters Shawn's head with ladders. Some really nasty stuff, but it's slow to take advantage due to his bad knee. Shawn reverses a whip and shoots Jericho to the ladder to the floor. Shawn press slams the ladder down on top of him, another great spot. Shawn sets up Jericho on the table. He teases a ladder moonsault, but Jericho blocks, and they end up fighting on the ladder. Shawn body presses him down through the table. A lot of setups and counters with the ladder from there as both guys are battered. Jericho ends up in a folded ladder against the corner, and Shawn wins the battle and shoves him back to the mat. Then hits a big elbow onto the edge of the ladder to drive it through Jericho. Jericho blocks Sweet Chin Music with the ladder and eventually pins Shawn under it, but climbs, but Shawn powers up and tips the ladder over. Jericho goes all the way to the floor and is in crazy pain with his knee. Just fantastic selling. Shawn gets close to the title, but Jericho tips the ladder again, takes another sick bump. They battle on the ladder, but Jericho gets tripped and he gets stuck in it. As Shawn gets close, out comes Lance Cade. He pulls Shawn down, but he eats Sweet Chin Music. Jericho frees himself and climbs, but Shawn meets him at the top. They battle as the crowd goes nuts. They both yank on one end of the belt with a tug of war. The now bloody Jericho dangles from it, but he pulls himself up and headbutts Shawn and wins the match as Shawn lets go of the belt and Jericho hangs on to it. And a great finish. This was a war. Insane bumps, vicious offense, not just a spot fest. They used the ladder as a weapon and completely destroyed each other. It was a battle worthy of this feud, and the drama paid off. It was a sharp finish, too, as both guys were dead even until the bitter end. Just another classic. This feud has delivered. It's an all-timer. I believe it's the best match we watched to this point, for sure, Scott, for this year. So I agree. I went 4 3/4 stars.
I went 4 3/4 as well, just falling short of 5 for me. Your match time was, did they hit 30 minutes? Let me see. I don't think they quite. Oh no, 22:20. So it was actually shorter than the match in Unforgiven.
Which is nice. That's fine. We didn't need.
Yes.
We didn't need to drag out the drama. Just bang it through.
Right. This match is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I argue, and after watching it, I realized, you know what? The match, it makes me realize the match at Unforgiven is pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just as even with this. This match is amazing.
I had this better, but yes, they're both great.
Yeah. I to me, they're almost equal. And I don't think there's any problem with Dave making this the match of the year, because even and let me tell you something, 05 to end of 09, TNA was pretty good considering who's there. And for Dave to make this match of the year speaks volumes, because you had a ton of amazing workers. And I mean, you got Kurt, AJ, and Samoa Joe alone in TNA at this time, and this match still, because you got two guys who just get it, and we've talked about that. And this is not a spot fest. These guys know not to make a spot fest. This is them. The ladder is the key to open the door to the world title, and it's a weapon. But it's not like, they're not those kind of guys that kind of fuck around for 5 minutes and then big spot, fuck around for 5. That's what I always used to get on Jeff Hardy's case about. He didn't know how to put the spots together. He just kind of fucked around and then big spot, and then fucked around and then big spot. We're talking about two guys who don't do that and probably haven't done it in 15 years. Shawn's probably never done it in 22 years. It was just violence. Like Shawn, the reason I love watching Shawn in title matches at this time was, to him, the title was secondary. He wasn't winning it for himself. He knew his resume was well documented. It was about punishment and revenge for the other guy. And if taking away the world title would make him miserable, would hurt Jericho, so be it. That's the difference. Shawn wasn't doing it for himself. This isn't the 1997, 1996 Shawn. This is the Shawn that the belt means nothing to him in the grand scheme of things. It's about hurting Jericho. All about hurting Jericho. And it goes back to the punch to Rebecca at SummerSlam. And that is the lynch to taking this to the next level. That's why, Mike, I love this match to death, and I love watching these two guys wrestle. Number one, because this is literally the last match of the Ruthless Aggression era. This is it. So they go out with a bang in arguably the best match of this half of the decade.
Yeah, I'm going to go the full 5 on this one. And a part of that is because it feels rare that you get a feud this good with the blow off that actually feels final in this way. Like, my favorite feud of the early 90s is Savage and Roberts, and there's definitely a thing that has in common with this. There is the like, oh, you hit the white, like, you dastardly, it just makes the person so much more evil. But that never got the blow off match that this got, and the build of it all. I mean, yeah, I feel like the quarter of a star off is just Lance Cade. Like, it does date this as very specific to 2008, but at the same time, like, I was blown away by this. I wish that, I don't think they do it right on the network. They should just have these feuds in their entirety from beginning to end in one package.
Yeah, it's something that I don't know why they never, especially before Peacock, when they were really trying to do different like stuff, right? That could have been something really cool that they never quite did. Although, I don't know, Scott, at one point they did like shows like rivalries or whatever where they would kind of do it, but you should just have a playlist of feuds that just has all the matches and big moments.
Yeah, all the promos and all the matches, because I mean, these are two of the best ever being their best ever against each other. I mean, Michaels, if he had just ended in 98, you'd still be like, oh, that guy's great. But the second run, and this is even before, WrestleMania 25, it's pretty mind blowing. I watched this and I like stood up at the end and I was alone staring at a computer.
Yeah, it delivered. It completely held up for sure. I mean, it has a great reputation, and yeah, I would agree. I think it's the end. This feud is probably the last great feud. I don't want to say in the history of WWE, but it's for a while. And I don't think the new era really begins until WrestleMania 26, which is when Shawn's done, when Batista's done. You really start to feel the transition. But I do think from this point till then is like kind of like a bridge stretch. Like, we've had these before, right? I think it's another one of those, like a bridge period, where it feels like this is kind of the transition point into early 09. You still get some non-PG stuff. I think the PG era doesn't really begin till 10. But this is like the last great, just intense personal feud we get for a while. So,
yeah.
All right, let's get to our awards. MVP. I mean, I can't choose like between Jericho and Michaels. I mean, to me, it's both of them. And this one, I don't know how you go otherwise.
No, there's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I would give the nod. If I had to pick one between them, I would go Michaels as just. And I usually don't like when the champion comes out first, but Michaels coming out second made this feel so important, and it was just beautiful. Yeah, so I go Michaels MVP.
All right, LVP. I'm going to MVP. I thought they made him look like a goof and a bum. I don't know. He's already getting left off shows. Like, are we done with him? Like, the push has been so good. It just felt like they could have used him better. Then Kofi and Punk kind of make him look stupid too. I don't know. I just thought he looked kind of soft on the night.
I agree 100%. I said it to you on the last show too. I feel like he's getting punked out, no pun intended, after having such a great run. And as they try to turn him face, it seems like he's getting like lost in the shuffle. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. When you said it, JT, of like, when your gimmick is I'm not on the show, and then you prove why, you are the LVP.
Right. Yep. Exactly. All right. Best match. I'm assuming we all agree. Shawn and Jericho. Okay. Worst match. I had the women's Beth and Candice.
Yeah. But not bad though. Not as bad as the last show.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. All right, best moment. I went Jericho's celebration at the end. Bloody, barely able to stand with the title. just on top of the world right now.
Yep, I agree.
I went Michael's entrance. It felt epic. Like it just the way that Jericho was smug, and the way the crowd exploded for Michaels, and seeing someone be that over in an era where I was like, I don't know who was that over, but it was just like, oh, shit's going down.
Right.
And that song can be so silly, but it felt like a battle cry. Sexy boy.
All right. Surprise of the night. I went with Big Show knocking out Taker clean. I did not see that coming at all.
No, I didn't either. As bad as I was not a fan of the movie, I didn't expect it either.
I would go Hardy, Triple H just being as good as it was. I mean, I figured it would be good. I didn't think it would be that good. And that was kind of a surprise that those guys, they should have been second to last on this show, but they still wrestled like they were the main event.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, final grade. God, we continue to crank along, and I'm gonna be honest, guys. This is my highest rated show of the year so far, in a year that's been filled with great stuff. My previous high was Rumble 08. I had it at 8. I have this at an 8.5. We get the match of the year. We got Hardy and Triple H. I liked Big Show and Taker a lot. Yeah, match grade wise, if you look at it, there's like some middling stuff, but man, that back end really, really pops. If it wasn't for the kind of that time killing stuff in the middle, this might have been even higher. But I think any show that has a 4 3/4 all timer and a 4-star match and a 3-star match, and it's a tight show that doesn't drag out. It had a hot crowd, nothing below 2, which was the women, and everything else was fine. Yeah, this really did it for me. I love this. I thought the show was awesome.
Mm.
Yeah,
I almost gave it. I was almost going to give it a 9, but I figured that might have been a scoosh high. So I'm gonna. Do we give quarters for shows?
No.
I don't remember.
No, we never have.
Right.
You can if you want.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. So I'm gonna be even with you. I'll say 8.5 as well. I mean, this show was really fun to watch. It flowed. Portland crowd was hot, which is, we haven't seen a Portland crowd in almost 4 years, over 4 years. They were pretty hot. It was fun. It was a fun show. The main event on both sides is good. And yeah, I agree with you, Mike, a ton of talent, but at the same time, I don't know, the Taker stuff still just is frustrating for me. But anyway, great show top to bottom.
I would go 8 only because that first hour you really could have just cut. I mean, some of it was decent, but in terms of once you get into those last 3 main events, it's pretty amazing. If that was a SummerSlam, even if that was certain years WrestleManias, that you had those 3 matches on it, that's a pretty damn good Mania. So I mean, this was really fun. I think the last one I did was one of the lowest rated ones you guys ever did. It had a Bully Busick match that was 15 minutes. And I think you gave 3s. So thank you. Because when I saw, when I was like, oh, you do No Mercy. And I was like, oh shit, that's actually a good one.
Yeah. You got a good one. Hit the jackpot.
Yeah, and I mean, real gold mine with that final match.
All right, that'll do it. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with Cyber Sunday 2008. Should be a fun one to check out. Be sure to, again, check out everything we have to offer across our podcast networks. Mike, anything you want to plug quick before we go?
Yeah, I do a show called Wrestle Roast, where we roast different wrestlers, and it's just fun, silly, and it's on all things comedy, and yeah, definitely worth checking out. We just roasted The Undertaker.
All right, very good. Check it out. Mike, appreciate you joining us for another trip down memory lane. Everyone take care and have a great Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
That shit do no slow. his O's like brothers to play Santa Claus. To try to get off in them drawers, but not me. See, I ain't trying to kiss you though. You can keep it to yourself and the mistletoe. Rip down for the holiday season. Do it like this for a reason. Check it. See, Christmas is supposed to be pleasant, but I'm tired of cheap hoes trying to get presents. Buying brother penny junk for small amounts. Talk about it's the thought, not the gift that counts. Whatever. Save it for your man, baby doll. And you can get the jingle balls. Oh, me? I'm finna spark a split. So if you come with a cheap gift, you leave with a cheap gift. That's how we doing it. Alright? Ain't no white Christmas in Rough Town, kid.